Hey everyone, and welcome back to another King Arthur Legends Rise video. So in today's video, guys, we're going to be talking about Pedarge's Sanctuary. Fair warning, this video is going to be a little bit negative probably, because I really, truly hate whenever games like this do things like this, which is create an entire dungeon around selling new characters. It really frustrates me to my core. And that is what they have done with this dungeon. However, I guess the silver lining is, unless you're a super whale or even playing for a decent amount of time and allocating your resources to necessary OP champs like Nika or whatever, or Ceres, then you do have the ability to beat it. Okay? Like, it's possible. You can see here that there are people who are doing this. So good on them, and that's awesome. I've also beaten it. However, I don't think it's really viable for about 90% of the player base. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the dungeon mechanics and what you should strive for to eventually move towards being able to beat this. Now, these sets, I guess the good thing is these sets aren't very good. The Safeguard set is pretty solid for Arena, PvP. Prevention set's garbage, don't even worry about it. And Ascension set is pretty good, but it's more so for, like, speed teams, which I don't even think you need. It's more of just a challenge. Like, let's try and beat out the other trophy speed teams that are going on right now. So that is the good thing. I really don't farm these gear sets at all, just because the runs take forever, and again, the design is just so annoying. So let's talk about this. We'll talk about possible characters and all of those things. Okay. So the Harpy Queen. I'm going to give you an overview, because if you go through this stuff, this is just word vomit. That's all it is. It's just a bunch of vomit, and I'll tell you what this boss actually does, okay? You can't really damage this boss. DOT, hardcore damage, raw damage, any of that, okay? How you kill this boss is by killing the Harpy minions. And the boss revives the Harpy minions once you kill them. Every time you kill a Harpy minion, it will take away 5% of the boss's max HP. Now, when you're dealing damage, if you have like an AoE damage dealer, you will be doing minimal amounts of damage to this boss. So you don't need to kill, what is that? You don't have to kill 20 harpies to kill this boss. That's not what that is. But your main source of damage is going to be from killing these little harpies. Okay. Now, the boss, like I said, has all of these immunities, so you can't reduce its attack gauge. You can't really do a whole lot of damage to it. So what you're trying to do is just always have these harpies dead. The other thing that this boss does is every time it takes a turn, is it gains 2 stacks of a buff called Burnt Offering. Burnt Offering increases the effect resistance of the boss, which doesn't really matter because you're not trying to land any kind of debuffs on the boss. It already has tons of immunities anyway. What's important about these Burnt Offering buffs is if the boss takes a turn using specific attacks, like this one, Divine Punishment, and then this one, which is Flashing Plume. If the boss has multiple stacks of that Burnt Offering up, it will do so much damage that you won't be able to really survive at all. So how do you get rid of these Burnt Offerings? Yes, you have to just kill the harpies. So on their last passive here, it says, upon dying, it inflicts damage to the Harpy Queen, and that's equal to 5% of her HP, and then it also removes 1 Burnt Offering. So this is where this is kind of annoying, is every time the boss goes, it adds 2 burnt offering, and if you kill a harpy, you only remove 1 burnt offering. So it's very, very hard to keep those burnt offerings off the boss. And on top of that, it's kind of like an RNG of whether or not you'll pass or fail, because depending on when the boss is planning on using these 2 attacks, you might have just killed a harpy or whatever like that, and then the boss took a turn to put up more burnt offerings, and now you can't kill any other harpies, and the boss is getting ready to use this attack. So that happens very often. But those are the 2 critical things that you need to pay attention to this boss, is try and reduce the amount of burnt offerings, and then also know that killing the harpies is the main source of damage. Thankfully, killing harpies does both things. Gets rid of the burnt offering and kills the boss. So you need to plan around killing the harpies. So common sense would say, oh, okay, I'll just use AoE damage dealers, right? The problem is most heroes, I think almost all of them, have AoEs on their skill 2 or 3. Now, that wouldn't be bad. Maybe you have a vigor set or whatever to make sure that you spam it, but there's a couple issues with that. The first one is the boss also puts up silence on people. I think the harpies also do this, maybe. There's shock, there's bleed, depletion. Okay, yeah. So one of the harpies puts up silence, and then the boss also puts up silence. This is very, very hard to resist. Even with like a high effect resistance champion like a Anya, sometimes can't resist this. So you can bring in heroes that have abnormal status, removal, or immunity. That might be a possibility. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is because it goes back to the company selling a hero that can still do AoE even if they're silenced. We'll talk about that here in a second. So abnormal status is a thing. You'll see a lot of damage over time effects as well. So you have to worry about damage over time, abnormal status. You have to worry about AoE damage. Right now, yeah, I think that's everything we've gone over. So if you want to do massive amounts of damage to the harpies, the harpy minions, you have an additional problem. Whenever the harpies are inflicted with a debuff, aka defense down, right? Defense down or increased damage, they will reduce the duration of that debuff for 1 turn. Most of them are 2 turns. And then on top of that, as soon as they're inflicted with the debuff, they will gain defense increase. So it kind of negates that. So not only that, putting up debuffs isn't very strong. The other thing that they end up doing is the boss has these 2 buffs put up on the harpies at all times, which is critical strike defense increase 3 and critical strike resistance increase 3. This makes it extremely hard for you to deal damage when you're critting, which is how most characters are built, other than the one hero that we're going to be talking about in a second. So the harpies reduce debuffs by a turn, put up defense increase, and then the boss always has critical strike defense and critical strike resistance increase on these harpies. So how do you do damage? The way you do damage is inflicting damage over time. So if you inflict damage over time, it will increase the duration of the DOT by 1 turn, and it will put damage taken increase 2 on the enemies. So you're like, okay, let's do some damage over time damage. The problem is the damage over time damage actually doesn't do enough to the harpies to consistently take off these burnt offering buffs on the boss. So that's a second issue. The other issue is the boss can just remove the DOTs from these harpies, and this kind of negative effect on the harpies is on a cooldown. It's not like, oh, I can just put it up all the time. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place here. So how do you do damage against harpies if you can't crit them, if they put up defense increase whenever you put a debuff up on them? What are you supposed to do? So you understand the mechanics that you need to know right now. Okay? You can't crit. You got to do AoE, but you have to deal with silence. You have to remove burnt offerings or you'll get one shot. And the best way to kind of achieve maximum damage on the harpies is damage over time. So let's talk about possible heroes, okay? We're going to talk about the one hero that the game tried to sell you for this dungeon, which is Charlotte. Her whole kit is basically built around this dungeon. The problem is she sucks. So you can't really use her unless she's fully maxed out, and then you also have, a Vivian to go along with her, and we'll talk about that in a second. So Charlotte's skills attack all enemies, at least her skill 3, does an AoE, and she gains Pierce. So that's really nice, okay? That's good. However, if you use this skill, you will lose 50% of your max HP. That is crazy. She's going to die very fast. However, that's how her kit works. Whenever she dies, she revives herself with only 1% max HP, but then gives herself this big shield and then gains herself this Leaking Divinity, which increases her attack by 40%, and she can't land crits. So this is the whole thing around her build. Is you want her to die so then that she can come back, have really high attack, not crit, and then her actual relic allows her to do pierce, high damage without critting. That's literally the whole thing. And then if she has this Leaking Divinity once she dies, her abilities then have the chance of inflicting hit accuracy increase and defense decrease on their self for one turn. This is someone not applying a debuff, but the enemy themselves is applying the debuff. So it won't reduce it by a turn. It's a very dumb, weird mechanic. The issue with this is Charlotte just dies so fast that even whenever she revives herself, she'll just die. Whenever you get to the higher stages, you need a flame relic to do this. She will be the target of all of your enemies' attacks, and she will just die immediately. Which is why this whole thing is so stupid, is because the game gives you a character to try and beat, or the game sells you a character to try and beat that dungeon, but then it's just like, oh, by the way, yeah, this character is really good at beating that dungeon, but the higher stages, you're going to need that flame relic, so why don't you pay us $50 for it, and then everything will be all right. It's very dumb. I hate this type of design. Because right now, even in her base form, she's terrible. But she is literally built around trying to do this. Now, you'll see that she pairs with Vivian. Vivian is another character that they're trying to push in this dungeon. We've already seen that the DOTs is something that the harpies land on you. So Vivian has a great skill where she removes all of your allies' DOTs and converts them to recovery over time. This is huge. This is a great skill for this dungeon. She's supposed to be the premier healer, right? On top of that, she also has the ability to burn, which is a DOT, which we've seen on the Harpy minions. This is very important because it puts up the damage taken increase on them, as well as increasing the amount of burn time on them. They tick it up by a turn. She also counter attacks whenever an ally is hit to put up the DOT. So she's supposed to be stacking DOTs, and she's supposed to be taking them off and keeping your team healthy. The nice thing is with her is whenever Charlotte uses her skill 1, wherever Charlotte is, whenever Charlotte uses her skill 1, she has the ability to co-op attack with Charlotte. With Vivian. So Vivian can put up burns that way. Whenever Charlotte dies, her skill 1 will also be an AoE. It's for very low damage, which is why I think the developers or the people who are managing this game didn't really think this out. I don't even think they play their own game, because this is like peak stupidity, in my opinion. This is peak stupidity. So yeah, Charlotte and Vivian are supposed to be your main people. Now, what I think they were trying to do, okay, is this is on a 4-turn cooldown whenever Charlotte dies. She usually will not be around long enough to make this work as long as she is in her Storm Relic. If she's in her Flame Relic, you can have, the Harpies or the Harpy Queen target another character that might be a little more bulky, so they don't target Charlotte. So what I think they were trying to do is use Vivian to reduce the cooldown of all of your allies to loop back around to Charlotte. I think that's what they planned. On top of that, some other Steed allies, because a couple of these heroes, like Vivian and Charlotte, they revolve around like Steed's favor, attack speed increase. This is very good. We already talked about how the attack gauge boost isn't something that is viable in this dungeon, so you need to use things like attack speed increase. So this is really nice from Vivian. Charlotte also has some Steed's favor stuff, like effect resistance, hit accuracy, things of that nature. What else does she give? Effect accuracy increase, attack speed for herself, stuff like that. So Lancelot is pretty good. He's got the AoEs. He's got damage over time increase, all damage over time taken increase. So he does have those things, as well as an attack speed aura. All of these things are supposed to be built around this dungeon. However, like I said, the damage over time just isn't enough damage to kill the Harpies, so you need someone to do the additional damage, but Charlotte dies too quick. It's all really terrible. So every single team that is used to beat this dungeon is purely with Nika. And most likely Nika with a Chivalry 8, because that's where you get the additional Vigor charges. I think almost every single team's going to have Nika in here. So this is just really stupid. It's stupid design. I don't think you guys should really worry about it. If you do have Nika, just use these teams. These teams are going to get it done. You'll eventually beat it. And it's whatever. Outside of that, the only theory I can think of is if you have Charlotte with her Flame Relic, if she's like Chivalry 8, along with a Vivian that is at least Chivalry 3 to reduce her cooldown, with a Lancelot to put up the DOTs and the increased damage taken, and then you're going to be using somebody else, maybe like a Turin, to put up like evasion or effect resistance. This is the only thing I can truly think of, but it's not worth building these heroes whenever the same main heroes that you see in these dungeons is going to basically get the job done. It's this with Morgan, and then you have somebody like an Anya in her Flame Relic or something like that, and that's the entire team. So yeah. This is kind of just the mechanics around this boss and how you completely need to just ignore it. And if you don't have these set heroes, like the overpowered crazy heroes, I did a tier list the other day. All of these heroes are in the top 2 tiers, and mine are Chivalry 8 and up, other than Morgan, but her Chivalry 8 doesn't even matter. And that's what you need to beat the game. It's the same thing over and over. So that's all I got. Large rant. I hope it made you understand the mechanics at least a little bit better. But the bad news is the mechanics don't matter because you just have to overpower it anyway. Okay, that's all I got. See ya.